For White Folks Who Teach in the Hood, a project by Yanel Aguirre, Brittany Luttrell, Peter Luttrell, and Roberto Ruiz. Introduction. In the introduction, Emdin describes the problem that is occurring at what he describes as hood schools. The biggest factor he claims are the racial differences between the white teachers and what he calls neo-indigenous students. He traced the issues back to the Carlisle Indian Industrial Schools. He uses a direct comparison to the Carlisle School to our current hood schools. He proposes the use of the term neo-indigenous to connect marginalized youth to the Native American population. Carlisle School. In this school, Native American students were taught to become more white by teachers who themselves were white and, according to themselves, came to teach with the best intentions. Through this process, either students rebelled and failed, or they had their cultural identity stripped away. The comparison is that our current students at hood schools are facing the same cultural and identity crisis. They are told that their culture and behavior is considered bad student behavior, and thus they either fail or they lose themselves in the process to conform to be the good student. Neo-indigenous, used to identify urban youth. Only difference between neo-indigenous and an indigenous population is the indigenous connection to their land. They engage in the classroom in ways that oppose traditional school norms. The neo-indigenous value cultural artifacts such as their clothing and music. They are expected to remove themselves from their culture by teachers and the educational system.
Chapter 1, Camaraderie, Reality and the Neo-Indigenous. Chapter 1 of Emdin's book deals with the understanding the reality of the situation that our students come from. He rationalizes that most teachers come from a background of some type of privilege that has allowed them to reach where they are currently in life. Due to this background, Emdin suggests that most teachers have a false presumption of the students they face on a daily basis in the classroom. Basically, it is almost as if we look down on the students we teach because they look and possibly act different than we do. Physical space and emotional space. Understanding the situation that the student is experiencing at home. When Emdin is referring to this, he's talking about we need to know exactly what our students come from on a daily basis to be able to understand how to better teach them. He then shifts into reality pedagogy, meeting the students on their own cultural and emotional turf. Allow students to express their issues with the learning process. Accomplish this by being open to their needs. Treat students as unique individuals that need to have the teaching and learning process tailored to their needs. We often forget that students want to learn. However, we need to know exactly what they want to do when they are learning. To do so, we need to have these conversations with our students on a daily basis or a weekly basis to allow ourselves to make changes, adjustments, to better understand and to allow them to understand our teaching.
Chapter 2, Courage. In this chapter, we get a closer look at the students themselves and the white folks who are teaching at the hood schools. We get an impactful visual of the prison-like schools with their metal detectors and large doors. We have teachers who, at first sight, are judging students if they're going to be the teachable ones or the troublemakers. The students are already being judged and placed into categories before they even arrived into the classroom. Juxtapose this to the visuals of the students being excited to come to school and showing off their new clothes at school. We also see the white folk indoctrination that new teachers are put through. They get phrases like, "You're too young," or "You look just like them," and "Don't smile until November." Through this, the teachers themselves are removed from their own identity and culture in order to conform to the prototypical white folk teacher. At the end, we also see the state and district-based practices of forcing teachers to worry about GPA, test scores, and graduation rates that also forces teachers to again remove their culture and identity. Fear-based narratives. Bringing in stereotypes into schools and applying them to the students. Judging the students as teachable ones or the troublemakers. This shares a parallel with Europeans judging the indigenous using the same stereotypes. This creates the idea that teachers are either the good guys and are at war with the students. This is the idea that being good equals acting white, and being black equals to not wanting to do well in schools. Teachers condition students to be the proper student and thus remove removes the culture that defines these students. Teachers are told that you cannot look like your students and that you cannot smile until November, and thus they are losing their identity just like the students are. Facing fear before and beyond November. Due to testing, GPA, and graduation rates, teachers feel like teaching is the only important thing that matters. This allows teachers to remain emotionally detached from students, and teachers feel like they cannot add themselves and their experiences into their lesson. Teachers also are in fear of students breaking or hurting each other with materials needed to make engaging lessons. These prejudices allow teachers to justify their ineffective teaching, and thus students do not have an ownership of the learning, and they view exams and tests as just being your test.
Chapter 3, Church. In this chapter, Emdin visits a Pentecostal Black Baptist church. He takes one of his co-teachers with him to allow them to see just exactly what a pastor does to get his congregation engaged in the message. Much like the Reverend at the Pentecostal church, Emdin says teacher needs to take a creative environment where the students are excited to be there and want to remain engaged throughout the whole lesson. This takes time, however. Sometimes this could take more time than planned, but it is something that is necessary to have the students become excited to learn. Although it looks appealing, sometimes being too prepared could be a bad thing. For instance, the young man that was with Emdin at the church was always focused on his lesson plans being the perfect model lesson plans for teachers to use, but he lacked an interaction and student engagement. Unfortunately, this led to students not being willing to learn, not wanting to learn, and overall just showing bad behaviors. After experiencing this, Emdin moves into a Pentecostal pedagogy. In this, he tells the teachers to create a call and response exchange between the teacher and the students that will promote a focus and engagement environment, allowing for the students to be excited about what is being taught and also desire to be engaged in the learning that is about to happen. Next, he says that we should allow for a solemn time of reflection for the students to reflect on what has been taught and how it has changed the knowledge that they have gained thus far. This is to allow for students to experience a personal attachment to what is being taught. Much like the pastors and barbers of churches in the hood, allow for the content to be open and flowing so that there is opportunity for special moments of interaction.
Chapter 4, Cogenerative Dialogues. What are cogenerative dialogues? Cogens are simple conversations between the teacher and the students with a goal of co-creating, generating plans of action for improving the classroom. Cogens in the purest form are structured dialogues about the inner working of the social field participants co-inhabit. What is a cipher? A cipher is a message written in a secret code. Structuring the educational cipher. Identify students as possible participants in the Cogen based on the different groups they are a part. In order for teachers to identify students as possible participants in the Cogen based on the different groups they are a part, they can identify them on social, ethnic, academic groups. Teachers should ensure different demographics in the classroom that are represented. Teachers must actively obtain information from students. What is your favorite subject? What is your favorite meal? What is your ethnicity? Who is your favorite artist? These are some questions that can be used to create Cogen groups. Diversity in the Cogen leads teachers to understand different realities of the students in the classroom. Teachers must record the observations of the unique demographics in the classroom. Teachers can tailor instruction to individual students in the classroom. Invite students who are identified as possible participants to take part in the dialogues. Different voices must be heard in the dialogues. The invitation process should be respectful of students, their time, and their status reputation in the classroom. Participation must be seen as entirely voluntary. Students will be allowed to draw their own conclusions about the Cogen is about. Dialogue is not intent intended to replicate negative experiences they have in school. Empower the student to decide when the dialogue will take place. Arranging the physical space for the cipher and establishing the rules. Seats are positioned in a circle so participants can make eye contact with each other. There is music playing in the backdrop. The space should be a place where students will not be seen or overheard by other students or adults. Coding should be around a meal or a snack. During the initial dialogue, students go over the rules that will guide their coding. The rules are: no voice is privileged over another. There is only one mic, or only one person has the floor at any given time. The coding results in a plan of action for improving the classroom. Sparkling the initial dialogue. In order to teachers to spark the initial dialogue, they gotta frame and name the initial members of the group as special advisors of a secret board that in essence controls the class. They gotta ensure the initial coding fosters students' excitement about participating in the process. Teachers should ensure students experience positive results from being a part of the conversation. Teachers must enact the co-generated idea and be explicit letting them participants is doing so. Continuing the cipher. The coach must meet regularly at least 3 times and establish their own routine. During the third cogent, teachers should ask one of the participants to invite a friend from the class to participate in the next cogent. After the fourth cogent, one participant is asked to opt out of the next round of cogents and asked to take on an assignment role in the classroom. Students make the decision to opt out of the dialogue and take on a new role in the class. By doing this, the teacher is positioning the students as key players in the classroom.
Chapter 5, Co-Teaching. In this chapter, we get an overview of traditional methods of co-teaching. In traditional co-teaching, we can have two teachers who are on the same experience level co-teaching, a new teacher or a student teacher mixed with a classroom teacher, and an ESE teacher co-teaching with a traditional teacher. His proposal for an improvement of the concept of co-teaching would be teaching alongside a fellow student, which brings in student co-teaching. This would allow the new Indigenous student to model how to teach in a way that they will understand. Students who are participating in this co-teaching can see all the preparation it takes to create a lesson. This benefits both sides as students get to learn from their peers and be taught in a way that they will engage in. The teacher will act as a student and learn from the student teacher in how to better teach his or her students.
Chapter 6, Cosmopolitanism. What is cosmopolitanism? It is an approach to teaching that focuses on fostering social-emotional connections in the classroom with the goal of building students' sense of responsibility to each other and to the learning environment. The students are involved with every aspect of the operation of the classroom and are responsible for ensuring that citizenship in the classroom is both enacted and extended to everyone who occupies the same place and space. The teacher is the facilitator of the process who identifies the roles that students can fulfill and tasks they can perform that connect them to the classroom. Roles and responsibilities in the classroom family. Teachers must identify the possible roles for every student. Some examples for this are equipment distributor, technology supervisor, desk arranger, assignment collector, and guest greeter. The process should allow volunteers. Students receive academic credit for their performance in these roles. Developing a cosmopolitan ethos in the classroom. Speaking the student language. Teachers must apply the language to activities completed in the classroom. For example, all for one for all. Implementing distributed teaching. That's a creation of a space where the expression of vulnerability is not viewed as weak by their peers. It's also called the Cosmo Duo. Welcoming neo-indigenous form of communication. Touch is a significant form of communication that can be associated with positive educational outcomes. For example, the classroom handshake. Fostering family. This practice reinforces students' connection to their classroom and to forge an identity around the content being taught. For example, classroom name. Chapter 7, Content and Context. Social capital. Share cultural knowledge based on similar backgrounds and experiences. Students exchange the capital for their collective benefit. Social network. Tight-knit and interconnected binds that human beings with shared social capital have to each other. Learning to use context. Being in the same social spaces, engaging with context, making connections between the out-of-school context and classroom teaching. How contexts affect content. When students are fully engaged, their curiosity about their content is awakened. To allow content to be taught on an optimal level, teachers must welcome non-traditional ways of expressing content knowledge.
Edmund talks about dealing with the neo-indigenous in Chapter 8. The teacher should follow the same tactics used in their respective neighborhoods to be able to connect with them on a deeper level. To help handle issues in the community, elders would have two groups partake in a battle that would inevitably relieve tension between the two groups. Through a process of competition between friendly teammates, the elders would choose the best possible warrior to represent them in the final battle. Teammates would help the chosen warrior to prepare for the final battle by doing their own research. This would transform the method of battling into a friendly competition in the classroom. It helps allow the students to learn in a way that is unique to their upbringing. For example, a classroom competition uses friendliness to encourage collaboration within the students and to prepare for the end game. It also encourages students to work together to help those who are unsure of the task or subject area, but are willing to learn based off of what their fellow students are willing to share.
Chapter 9, Clean. Change the world and dress well doing it. In this chapter, Emdin states that we need to understand some of our students spend a majority of their finances on making sure their outward aesthetics are filled with the nicer clothing and the latest trends of today. We need to embrace this trend in the students and allow them to show their artistry, whether it be through their clothes or talents related to their desired arts. We should not be afraid to dress in a manner that is similar to the students. This could potentially open up opportunities for relationships to grow or trust to solidify. We need to create an environment in the classroom that allows them to feel free to use their artistic ability. Emden even suggests making space for a graffiti wall. We should make sure that whatever is happening in the classroom, that the students do not correlate it to jail. We should immerse ourselves in the culture of the students to better understand their reasoning for wanting to wear certain clothes, speak a certain way, or express themselves in a certain manner. Student engagement is the main idea behind following these strategies of allowing students to feel comfortable in their clothes and in their environment.
In Chapter 10, the neo-indigenous should also be exposed to the languages, learning styles, and different methods used to teach those of privilege. Edmund even gives examples of how the students should practice different vocabulary words or phrases to help them get accustomed to what they could experience in the real world. Essentially, the students should become so used to code switching that the practice of changing one's speech at a moment's notice is necessary. Consider the example of the classroom where the whole class would use slang vocabulary for one conversation and then change it to English vocabulary in an instant. The student being viewed in this situation was able to change from one vocabulary to the other without hesitation or issue. Not only should the student partake in this exercise, but also the teacher and the entire class as well. This method allows the students to prepare themselves for the opportunity to function in a manner that follows constructed codes and rules while staying true to their own cultural identities. To summarize Chapter 11, Emdin explains that some teachers should view their teaching as almost as if they were a curator, meaning that although they may have all the knowledge of the topic and the training to execute it, there is a chance that they do not completely understand what they are trying to accomplish. Emdin suggests that the teacher allows the students to take on the role as the curator by taking the opportunity to explain what the teacher does not understand about what they are learning. Emdin even mentions allowing students to use video and social media to help explain to the teacher how they can better teach the students, and also allows the students to use social media to help them develop a better understanding of the subject area. He goes into detail with multiple examples of how students can successfully use social media, and even suggests creating a class Facebook or Instagram page to share key information. Finally, Emdin makes these connections by suggesting that the teacher not hold the students back by trying to do this all themselves, but allow the students to partake. The teacher will give the students the opportunity to accomplish success in the classroom by doing these things they enjoy. So in conclusion, teachers teach based on how they were taught themselves. So we must be able to break the traditional mold in order to transform our students. A teacher's effectiveness relates to how teachers view their students.